Ready to dive into the heart of Latin American culture. We've got this awesome textbook, Lecturas Culturales 7 ABME edition, just overflowing with info on Hispanic countries.
Oh, yeah, it's got like everything. Famous people, inspiring quotes.
Even teaching guides.
I know, it's amazing.
So we're going to help you sift through all of it and find the good stuff.
Yeah, unpack it all. It's so cool how this book doesn't just give you dry facts. It kind of brings it all together, you know?
Yeah, it's like a tapestry.
Exactly.
Right there.
Country overviews, travel stories, biographies, those motivational quotes, and even a whole teaching guide. It's like a multi-sensory tour.
So let's break it down a bit. The book's got 5 parts. We start with an overview of all these different Hispanic American countries.
Then we get into these fictional travel stories set in those countries.
It's a cool way to do it. You get the facts, and then you get to experience those countries through a traveler's eyes.
Armchair travel with a dose of culture. I love it.
And then it gets really interesting. After the travel stories, we jump into biographies of famous Hispanics.
Athletes, musicians, artists, activists, the whole spectrum.
Yeah, and then we've got a whole collection of motivational phrases in Spanish.
Perfect for boosting those language skills.
And of course, we can't forget the teaching guide, packed with activities to really engage with the material.
Story maps using quotes to practice fluency. It's fantastic.
This one textbook is like a launch pad for exploring Latin American culture.
For sure. Speaking of exploration, let's jump into those country spotlights.
Okay, each country gets its own little section with short readings about the nation and its culture.
Vocab comprehension questions, and of course those travel stories.
It's like a mini encyclopedia.
It is. Let's start with a little taste of each one. Some intriguing tidbits to pique your curiosity.
I'm in. Give me the goods.
Okay, Argentina. It's got the widest avenue in the world. Avenida 9 de Julio in Buenos Aires.
Whoa. Imagine the parades.
Right. And speaking of sights, Brazil is famous for Carnival in Rio.
The costumes, the music, the energy.
It's a global phenomenon for sure.
Okay, what else? What else?
Bolivia. They have these unique dishes called silpancho and pique macho.
Okay, adding those to my must-try list.
Me too. And Chile. Their flag tells a story. The blue is the sky, the white is the Andes snow, and the red is the bloodshed for their independence.
Powerful imagery right there.
Absolutely. And speaking of things that pack a punch, Colombia, it's known for its biodiversity and, of course, their coffee.
Colombian coffee. The best way to start the day.
Right. Then we have Costa Rica, known for their commitment to conservation.
A huge chunk of their country is protected areas.
It's amazing they even got rid of their army to focus on peace and the environment.
Wow, that's impressive. Okay, what's next?
Cuba, an island nation with an incredible musical tradition.
Salsa rumba, the Buena Vista Social Club music, is life there.
It really is. And speaking of names that make sense, Ecuador, it sits right on the equator.
Makes sense to me. Also home to the Galapagos Islands.
The birthplace of Darwin's theory of evolution. Fascinating place.
It is. Okay, let's talk El Salvador, the smallest country in Central America.
And they use the U.S. dollar as their currency.
Interesting shows their connection to the U.S.
Absolutely. And speaking of countries with connections, how about a country that spans 2 continents?
Spain, straddling Europe and Africa, the birthplace of the Spanish language.
Over 500 million people speak Spanish worldwide. That's a huge linguistic footprint.
It is. And speaking of footprints, Equatorial Guinea on the west coast of Africa also claims Spanish as its official language.
The legacy of colonization reaching across continents.
Powerful stuff.
Okay, next up.
Guatemala, a blend of Mayan and Spanish influences.
You see it in their architecture, their food, their everything.
So true. And speaking of history, Honduras boasts the ancient Mayan city of Copan.
Intricate carvings, towering pyramids, a window into the past.
It really is. And speaking of legacies, Mexico holds the title of having the world's largest Spanish-speaking population.
A cultural powerhouse. Incredible art, delicious food, and a history that goes back millennia.
Absolutely. Now let's talk Nicaragua, known for its beautiful lakes and volcanoes.
A country of contrasts, shaped by powerful natural forces. It really is. And speaking of countries that connect things, Panama, it's a crossroads of cultures linking North and South America.
A true melting pot.
Absolutely. Now on to Paraguay, one of the few countries in South America where indigenous languages like Guarani are still widely spoken.
The resilience of indigenous cultures is remarkable.
It is. And speaking of resilience, Peru, home to Machu Picchu.
A testament to the ingenuity of the Inca civilization. An awe-inspiring sight.
It truly is. And speaking of drawing visitors, Puerto Rico, their beaches, their music, their food.
A blend of Caribbean and American influences. A culturally rich destination.
For sure. And the Dominican Republic, known for its music and dance.
Merengue and bachata. So much energy and passion.
Absolutely. And speaking of unique things, Uruguay, their national drink mate. It's more than just a drink, it's a social ritual.
A symbol of hospitality and connection.
Exactly. And last but not least, Venezuela, home to Angel Falls, the tallest waterfall in the world.
The breathtaking natural wonder.
It really is.
We've covered a lot of ground. From Argentina's widest avenue to Venezuela's tallest waterfall, and we've only scratched the surface.
Just a glimpse into the amazing diversity of Latin America.
So with that, let's move on to the next chapter of our deep dive, where we'll meet some of the incredible people who have shaped Latin American history and culture.
Get ready to be inspired.
It's amazing how those travel stories really bring the countries to life, you know?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's one thing to know the facts, but those personal stories really make you feel like you're there.
Exactly. Like with Argentina, we learned about the Pampas and the Gauchos, but then Martina in Argentina really brought it all to life.
Seeing it through her eyes, you know, understanding their connection to the land.
And their traditions.
Yeah, and who could forget that amazing description of the asado?
Oh yeah, Timmy's so hungry. It's not just a barbecue, it's like a whole social gathering.
It really brings people together.
It's those little details that make the information stick.
For sure. And the book does that so well with each country.
Like with Brazil, we got to experience the energy of Rio through Gustavo's eyes in Un Viaje a Brazil.
He wasn't just sightseeing. He was feeling the rhythm, you know.
Yeah, tasting the flavors, soaking up the atmosphere.
You're right there with him.
Strolling along Copacabana Beach.
Marveling at Christ the Redeemer.
Maybe even trying some feijoada.
Ooh, speaking of unique food experiences, remember those Bolivian salteñas?
Oh yeah, those savory pastries with the flavorful stews.
Yes, and a touch of sweetness.
Sounds incredible. And the story of Martin in Bolivia did such a good job of showing the country's diverse landscapes.
From the markets of La Paz to the beauty of Lake Titicaca.
It's a country that has it all.
It really does. And speaking of countries that have it all, Chile. Remember that striking fact about their flag?
Yeah, each color has such a deep meaning.
Connecting to their history and their land.
And Daniel in Chile really brought that symbolism to life as we traveled with him.
From the Andes to the forests down to Patagonia.
So many visual contrasts.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of contrast, remember how Costa Rica is so committed to peace and the environment.
Yeah, they abolished their army and focused on sustainability.
It's really inspiring. And Isabel in Costa Rica showed that perfectly.
We explored their rainforests, their beaches, their amazing wildlife.
A country that lives in harmony with nature.
It's something to admire, for sure.
It is. And speaking of harmony, remember how Ecuador has such a diverse range of languages?
Yeah, alongside Spanish, they have indigenous languages like Quechua.
It shows the richness of their cultural heritage.
And Marta in Ecuador gave us a glimpse of that as we traveled with her.
From Quito to the Andes Mountains down to the coast.
Such a vibrant country.
It is. And El Salvador, remember they use the U.S. dollar as their currency?
Yeah, it's a unique situation.
Shows their close economic ties to the U.S.
That's a complex relationship.
Definitely. And Elena in El Salvador captured that complexity as we explored with her.
From San Salvador to Volcán de San Miguel to Lago de Cotopique.
A fascinating country.
It is. And speaking of fascinating countries, remember how Spain spans 2 continents?
Yeah, that geographical position has really shaped their culture.
And their language?
And their place in the world.
It's amazing how geography can have such a big impact.
It really can. And Viaje a España gave us a taste of that history and culture.
We wandered through Madrid, saw the art in the Museo del Prado.
Maybe even tried some paella.
Delicious. And speaking of cultural intersections, Equatorial Guinea in Africa also have Spanish as an official language.
The lasting legacy of colonization.
It's a reminder that history has a long reach.
It does. And Laura in Guinea Equatorial showed us this unique blend of African and Spanish influences.
We explored Malabo, learned about their food, immersed ourselves in their culture.
That's a fascinating mix.
It is, and Guatemala is another great example of cultural fusion.
Yeah, a blend of Mayan and Spanish influences.
You see it in their textiles, their food everywhere.
And Mateo in Guatemala really brought that to life.
We explored, Tikal wandered through Guatemala City.
Maybe even tried some pepian or relenitos.
Yeah. Speaking of ancient history, remember how Honduras has the Mayan city of Copan?
Oh, yeah, those incredibly well-preserved ruins.
It's like stepping back in time.
It is. And Un Viaje a Honduras let us do just that.
We explored. Copan went to the island of Rotan,
And the rainforests of Pico Bonito National Park.
Such a beautiful country.
It is. And speaking of beautiful countries, remember how Mexico has the world's largest Spanish-speaking population?
It's a cultural powerhouse.
There are rich history, vibrant traditions.
What amazing food.
Un viaje inolvidable Mexico took us on such a great tour.
From Aurelia to Mexico City to the Pacific coast.
We even got to experience cliff diving at La Quebrada.
That was intense. And speaking of intense experiences, remember those stunning landscapes in Nicaragua?
Oh yeah, volcanoes, lakes, rainforests, beaches.
It's incredible.
Viajando por Nicaragua really captured that beauty.
We explored Granada, saw Volcan Masaya, relaxed on Lake Nicaragua.
A truly captivating country.
It is. And speaking of captivating details, remember how Panama uses both the Balboa and the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, it's a unique situation.
Reflects their close economic ties to the U.S.
And their role as a global hub.
It's all interconnected.
It really is. And Un Viaje a Panama showed us that interconnectedness.
We saw Panama City, the San Blas Islands.
And, of course, the Panama Canal.
An engineering marvel.
For sure. Now, Paraguay, remember how they still widely speak Guarani alongside Spanish?
Yeah, it's so cool how they've preserved that indigenous language.
It's a testament to their cultural heritage.
And Anna in Paraguay really let us experience that blend of cultures.
We explored Asunción, the Chaco region.
And enjoyed their traditional food.
Delicious. Speaking of iconic places, remember Machu Picchu in Peru?
Oh yeah, perched high in the Andes Mountains.
A UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Viaje de Diego a Peru made us feel like we were right there exploring it.
Soaking up the scenery.
Maybe even trying some ceviche in Lima.
Yeah. And Puerto Rico, remember their complex political status as a U.S. territory.
It's a long and complicated history.
It is. And Sofia in Puerto Rico captured that complexity as we explored with her.
We saw San Juan hike through El Yunque.
And enjoyed their music and dance.
It's such a vibrant culture.
It is. And speaking of vibrant cultures, the Dominican Republic is known for its incredible music and dance.
Merengue and bachata. They're global sensations.
Un viaje a la República Dominicana really captured that energy.
We explored Santo Domingo, relaxed on the beaches of Punta Cana.
Maybe even tried some meringue steps ourselves.
It makes you want to get up and dance. And Uruguay, remember their national drink mate.
Oh yeah, it's more than just a drink.
It's a social ritual, a symbol of connection.
Un viaje a Uruguay. Let us experience that firsthand.
We explored Montevideo, the beaches of Punta del Este.
Maybe even shared some mate with the locals.
Such a warm and welcoming culture.
It is. And finally, Venezuela, home to Angel Falls, the tallest waterfall in the world.
It's a sight to behold.
It is. And Tomas in Venezuela gave us a glimpse of that natural wonder.
Along with the city life of Caracas, the culture of Maracaibo,
And the industry of Valencia.
it's been an incredible journey through these countries.
Experiencing their unique cultures and landscapes through those travel stories.
They really added another dimension to our understanding,
And now we're ready to move on to the next chapter of our deep dive.
where we'll explore the lives of some incredible figures who have shaped Latin American history and culture. It's amazing how much those stories added to our understanding of the countries.
Oh yeah, totally. It's like you said before, it's one thing to know the facts, but those stories really make you connect with the culture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about all those motivational quotes.
Yeah.
The book's full of them.
Oh yeah, tons of them, over 200.
I know, and they tie in so well with the biographies we're about to dive into.
Oh, definitely. They bring those quotes to life, you
Yeah.
know? Like remember that one, education gives you weapons and wings to fight against the world.
Oh, yeah, it's a good one. And it totally fits with Lionel Messi's story.
From a small town to a global icon, he's incredible.
And he had to fight for it. You know,
Yeah.
He didn't have it easy.
No, he didn't. He honed his skills and worked his way to the top.
An inspiration for sure.
Absolutely. And speaking of inspiring figures, Shakira is another great example.
She's broken so many barriers with her music.
Language barriers, cultural barriers. She's reached a global audience.
A true ambassador for Latin American culture.
And she speaks like 6 languages, right?
I know, it's amazing. It shows how embracing different cultures can open doors.
It really does. And speaking of opening doors, Jenny Rivera built a bridge to so many hearts with her music.
Especially women.
She sang about real life, you know,
Yeah.
struggles and triumphs.
It made her relatable and empowering.
And her legacy continues to inspire people today.
Music can be so powerful. And speaking of powerful music, Chelino Sanchez really captured the spirit of Mexico in his corridos.
Tales of hardship, resilience, everyday life.
It resonated with so many people.
His music was a reflection of their lives.
It's fascinating how music can do that. And speaking of capturing the human experience, Frida Kahlo's self-portraits are just so raw and powerful.
They're windows into her soul, her pain, her strength.
She turned her struggles into art.
And challenged conventional ideas of beauty.
Her influence is still felt today.
Absolutely. And speaking of challenging conventions, Chavela Vargas defied gender norms with her music.
Singing rancheras traditionally performed by men.
Her voice was so deep and powerful.
A true icon.
She paved the way for other women in music.
And speaking of paving the way, Miguel de Cervantes gave us a story that's still relevant today.
Don Quixote, a timeless classic.
It's amazing how a story from so long ago can still resonate with us.
It speaks to the universality of the human experience.
And the power of storytelling.
And speaking of transcending time and culture, Selena Quintanilla blended musical genres and captivated audiences worldwide.
The queen of Tejano music.
She broke barriers while staying true to her roots.
And her legacy continues to inspire.
Especially young Latinas.
She showed them that anything is possible.
And speaking of inspiring figures, Vicente Fernandez was a true symbol of Mexican identity.
El Rey of ranchera music.
His voice was so powerful and soulful.
He embodied the heart and soul of rancheras.
Absolutely. And then there's Pancho Villa, a controversial figure but a symbol of revolution.
He fought for the rights of the poor and marginalized.
A reminder that the fight for justice is ongoing.
It's important to remember those who came before us. And speaking of remembering, Margarita Engel has brought Latino stories to life for young readers.
Her books and poetry celebrate their heritage.
Fostering empathy and understanding.
Representation matters.
It really does. And Rocio Durcal showed how music can bridge cultural divides.
Successful in both Spain and Mexico.
Her rancheras resonated with everyone.
The power of music to connect us.
And speaking of connecting people, Cesar Chavez fought tirelessly for farm workers' rights.
He led a movement that brought about real change.
His commitment to nonviolent resistance was inspiring.
A true leader and a symbol of social justice.
And speaking of fighting for justice, Sonia Sotomayor's appointment to the Supreme Court was a historic moment.
Breaking barriers and inspiring so many.
Her journey is a testament to hard work and perseverance.
She brings a unique perspective to the court.
And speaking of breaking barriers, Ellen Ochoa was the first Hispanic woman in space.
Shattering glass ceilings and inspiring young people.
Especially women and minorities in STEM.
Her story shows that anything is possible.
And Rita Moreno, a true icon, an EGOT winner.
Talent, perseverance, activism. She's done it all.
A role model for aspiring artists.
And a champion for diversity and inclusion.
She's amazing. And speaking of amazing legacies, Octavio Paz explored Mexican identity through his writing.
His poetry and essays delved deep into the complexities of culture.
He challenged readers to think critically.
And engage deeply with the world around them.
And speaking of challenging the status quo, Benito Juarez left a lasting mark on Mexican history.
His leadership during a turbulent time.
His commitment to education and reform.
He's a true national hero.
And speaking of enduring popularity, Luis Miguel has captured hearts for generations.
His music speaks to universal themes.
Love, loss, longing.
He connects with audiences on an emotional level.
And speaking of connecting with audiences, Roberto Gómez Bolaños, Chespirito, brought laughter to millions.
El Chavo del Light and El Chapo in Colorado, beloved characters.
They taught us to find humor in everyday life.
And the power of laughter to unite us.
And Maria Elena Velasco, La India Maria, brought laughter and social commentary to the screen.
Her character was a symbol of Mexican identity.
And she used comedy to address important issues.
A powerful combination.
And finally, Mario Moreno, Cantinflas, a comedic genius.
His wordplay, his physical comedy, his social critique.
He made us laugh and think at the same time.
A true master of his craft.
What an incredible group of people. Their stories are so inspiring.
They've shaped Latin American history and culture in so many ways.
And their legacies continue to inspire us today.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey.
We've learned so much about Latin American culture.
And we hope you have too.
But the journey doesn't end here. Keep exploring, keep learning, keep celebrating diversity.
Let the richness of Latin American culture enrich your life.
It's been a pleasure exploring with you.
The pleasure was all mine.